What's going down, guys? It's the next day reaction. You've had time to sleep on it, learn a little bit more about that game. How are we feeling? Has the mood changed at all? Because it was definitely very contentious after the game had ended, and rightfully so. And I'm just here to gauge how are we feeling sitting 2-3 on a short week, getting ready for Seattle. I want to talk about it all, see if any of the thoughts or feelings have changed, and we'll get into it all right now. But you guys already know what to do. Smash that like button, drop an SDS in the chat. Therapy session loading. I can feel it. Let's go. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is going down, SDS? I already see some of the comments piling in. Some people saying we're cooked. Oh, good stuff. I don't know if you guys woke up this way. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of did. I woke up real grumpy, a little bit agitated, a little bit like, oh gosh, here we go again. You know, like 49ers are 2-3, 0-2 in the NFC West. Definitely woke up feeling a little bit grumpy. Had a little bit of a case of the Mondays, all that kind of good stuff. But let's go through some of the updates. Kyle Shanahan spoke to the media today, gave some injury updates. So let's talk about where the 49ers currently stand, and then we'll have a deeper dive into our reaction of that brutal loss to the Cardinals. So Ricky Pearsall, we've kind of been waiting. Oh, and before we get into that, I want to make sure that this fun stream is brought to you by TickPick. Again, if you guys are going to the Seattle Seahawks game on Thursday, make sure you tap in with TickPick. Use my code SF9ers, get up to $25 off your purchase. So you can not only get the lowest prices on tickets with no hidden fees, but you can also get an additional $25 off. Just use my code SF9ers, link in the description. Let me know if you guys are going up to Seattle for that game. I will definitely be there, and hopefully I'll be traveling for a W, but we shall see. So Ricky Pearsall, he is not going to have his window activated, and to be honest, not that crazy, just because it's a short week. The San Francisco 49ers have, I mean, it's such a quick turnaround to get ready for this Seattle game that they don't even have time to even like think about this game. They really just have to move on to the next. This is really what it comes down to. And so with Ricky, it doesn't seem like a good fit to be able to fit him into that mold. So obviously he's not going to play against the Seattle Seahawks. We'll see when they open up his window, because it's going to be a good one when they do, but it's not going to be in Seattle. So the 49ers have brought in 4 kickers to Santa Clara for a tryout. Obviously, Jake Moody has a high ankle sprain. It does appear Jake Moody is going to miss some time. Thankfully, he didn't break anything, because the first reaction that I had to Jake Moody trying to make that tackle on the kickoff was Jake was done for the year. That was my initial reaction. So the fact that he got up and he walked up off the field, even though it looked like he was in a lot of pain, I was like, oh, that's a good sign, because I thought he was going to get carted off the field. Now, he did get carted to the to the locker room. X-rays. Sounds like he was able to escape with just a high ankle sprain. So actually, that is optimistic. That's a good sign, in my opinion, that he's not done for the season. And they have to completely go in a different direction with kicker because, yeah, I don't know. Like that would be a crazy situation to have to go through. Just I felt like we're finally getting comfortable with Jake Moody as the kicker. We're not like I remember his rookie season, hearing from a lot of the fans, myself included sometimes, with the unknown of a rookie kicker, you just didn't really know like what you were going to get. And I think, although he wasn't perfect, we felt more comfortable with him. And so that's an unfortunate situation that now you're going to have to bring in They brought in 4 kickers. They're going to have to see who's going to fill that role and for how long. So kickers were brought in today. The overarching injury updates is nothing presented on Talanoa Hufanga, who has a wrist injury. Just a tough situation for him, just getting back. Obviously from the ACL, but getting dinged up in other places. That's a tough one. Christian McCaffrey continues his ramp up process. We already heard he's not going to be activated for this game against Seattle. No issues there. Like, again, I'm still looking at week 10 against the Bucks as being the first game that he'll be back. So I'm not counting CMC back for Chiefs or Dallas. But we'll definitely have to see about that when it's. We'll probably get updates on it every week, so we'll see. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles has already been ruled out against Seattle. Chris Conley and Jacob Cowing are officially day to day. And we had one more update. Unfortunately, Yetur Gross-Matos had knee surgery today. And as a result of having the knee surgery, he will miss 4 to 8 weeks as he recovers. So, tough situation. Again, that's now two defensive linemen that you were relying on for this season. So that's a tough situation to be in. Obviously, Hargrave's already out for the year. Yetur Gross-Matos has been banged up. He's just really hasn't got his feet under him yet. But he's been dinged up all throughout the year, and now he will miss 4 to 8, and all that good stuff. So, yeah, we'll see. We will see how it all goes. I see some questions coming into the chat. Let's see where we want to go for this conversation today on our reaction afterward. I want to start with this, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. You had 3 players come out and say that the loss against the Cardinals was weird. I'm not sure if you guys had heard about this or you had seen it, but you had, I think it was Kyle Juszczyk. It was when talking to media, they talked about this game being weird. Like it was a weird loss. It was a weird feeling. It didn't sit right with them. 3 players say this was a weird one. So I think that's definitely one way to quantify it, because that's a game that you should have won. That's now 2 games on the season where you have a 10-point lead heading into the 4th quarter and it slips away. That to me is what's weird. We talked about this directly after the show. We talked about, or excuse me, after the game, we talked about how, yes, there were plays here or there that weren't being made. There were injuries. There were things that, like, you had fumbles, turnovers, all of those things. But for me, the biggest concern was, again, yet another 10-point lead slipping through your fingers. And again, when you start to stack those types of losses, they're a lot harder to digest. You'll hear players talk about this all the time. It's much easier to digest a loss where you played your best, just didn't go your way. The other team had a better game plan. One of those, like, when you have hard fought games and you lose at the end, and it's been a back and forth, and you're scrapping and clawing, and it's a good effort. Good. It's just, yay, sometimes the other team's going to get you. That's just how football works. But these two losses in particular, literally, they feel self-inflicting. They feel representative of the 49ers ability to finish. And that's a huge emphasis in football, is being able to finish the rep, finish the play, finish the drive, finish the game, finish the seat. Finishing is everything in football. So when you're seeing a team struggle to finish at the end of games, and they're continuing to have leads slip out of their fingers in games they should have won, weird is definitely one way to quantify it, for sure. You know, Players aren't going to come out and just say a bunch of crazy stuff. So I think weird is a word to quantify that. Weird is because I feel like when you say weird, it's like they're looking around, they're like, we should have won that game. We're the better team. We were better. We should have won that one. It's how did we lose? Like, I've been a part of games where you're like, man, I don't know how we lost that game. Cal versus Miami. How does Miami come back and win that game? It's all about momentum. It's all about keeping momentum away from the other team. And the 49ers have this kind of concerning trend of allowing teams to hang around. And as we've seen, not just this year, not just last year, but all throughout, is this trend of allowing teams to hang around, and then the momentum shifts and the other team snags it, and they steal a win. We've seen a lot of teams steal wins against the 49ers. And I think for me, that still remains the most concerning thing for me, is not necessarily the execution. I think you can fix that. I think you can correct that. I think you can make adjustments. I think their injuries, freak injuries, the turnovers that they had. Brock got tipped for a pick, got hit for a pick, and then you had Jordan Mason fumble. Right. I think you can correct all of those things. To me, it's again, we talked about it a lot. I think heading into the season, just kind of the vibes of the team, and things like that. It feels a little bit different. So again, we also know at the same time the best remedy is winning, right? The 49ers sneak out of that game with a W. The records reverse. They're 3-2. And again, that's the difference in this season so far, is the 49ers have put up a 4-1 effort. We're not going to say woulda, coulda, shoulda against the Vikings. They just got outplayed, outcoached in that particular game. It is what it is. Vikings are the hottest team in football right now. So although in the early portions of the season, that loss felt a little bit more um, unexpected. I think as we look now and you see the teams that the Vikings have beat, they're undefeated. The Vikings they're a good team. So I think better than we anticipated. So that changes the perception of that loss a little bit, but it's the Rams and the Cardinals. Is you're looking at a 4-1 team that is currently sitting at 2-3 because of the Rams game and because of the Cardinals. That's the challenging part of it. Because if we're talking about the 49ers being at 4-1 through 5 weeks, we're like, yeah, that this is kind of what we expected. This is kind of the roadmap that we anticipated. All right, we'll chalk up the Vikings game. Okay, they got us, right? Good for the Vikings. 4-1. No one's complaining about 4-1. No one's freaking out about 4-1. No one's saying fire Kyle after being 4-1. So that right there to me is the massive shift in perception surrounding this team right now. Is they are a handful of plays from being 4-1. And again, that's not a moral victory, and that's not what I'm trying to bring it, present it as. I'm trying to present it as that's how thin of margins there are in the NFL. And if you don't play your best ball and you don't close out fourth quarters, that's the difference of being 4-1 and 2-3 and 0-2 in division, 0-3, right? 0-3 in the NFC. That's the difference, right? That's the difference. Is this team is hurting itself right now more than I think anything else. That's what I really, really think it comes down to. Is yes, we are. No one is saying they're a 4-1 team because they're not 4-1. You can't be a 4-1 team. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say. They're not a 4-1 team. They're 2-3 because of how they close out games. That being the main issue right now, or one of the main issues with the 49ers, is when you have the lead, win the football game. That's what it is. Now, that's a high level overarching theme. And again, the point that I'm making is if you just do those two things, or just do that thing of closing out fourth quarters, you are 4-1. But they're not. They're 2-3, and that's what their record is. And now that's what they're being judged as, and that's where all the smoke and the fire is coming from. A lot of upset fans, a lot of people questioning this team, a lot of people trying to make sense of what is going to happen. Now, I see a lot of the fire Kyle talk. To me, like, we're way too early for that. I can understand you having criticisms of Kyle. I can understand you being upset with Kyle because I do think that Kyle, you have to put the responsibility for these fourth quarter losses at Kyle's feet because it's not just one thing. It's a continuation. They're finding different ways to lose. And to me, that's a responsibility that goes to your head coach because it's a lot of different reasons why they're losing in those fourth quarters. But ultimately, that is when you want to assign accountability and responsibility. To me, fourth quarter losses um, go to Kyle. Uh, but beyond that, I think it's just again, it's way too early to be able to call for Kyle to be fired because you have a long season left. Now you can call for Kyle to be fired all year if you want, but I don't think there's a world that exists where let's let's just say if Kyle is let go for in what my opinion would be a shocking turn of events, is that wouldn't happen until the end of the season. So right now, this team uh, is more concerned. I think about getting back on track. Only the fans right now are the ones who are considering firing Kyle because Jed York understands that, well, if you want to get this season back on track, the answer isn't firing Kyle. That's definitely not the answer. That's a conversation that needs to be discussed, in my opinion, at the end of the season, or if we get more than halfway into this thing and they're just not performing, then obviously the seat will heat up a little bit. And I think, all the frustrations that a lot of people do have with Kyle will come to the forefront, just like you've seen after this loss. So I'm not a huge fan of the fire Kyle movement because unfortunately the fire Kyle movement doesn't have a succession plan. And for me, as a kind of ranges of outcome person, I just have a hard time identifying firing Kyle as you're about to pay Brock Purdy, life changing quarterback money. And then the guy who was a part of that process of, developing him, executing a system is out the door. And then you're bringing in a whole new staff, whole new scheme, whole new everything. What after you just paid Brock? Uh, to me, that seems like a really hard thing to quantify in the current moment. That doesn't mean you can't be frustrated and unhappy and uh, want more from your coach. It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve anything. All it is an emotional response to being unhappy. So I understand that, but that doesn't mean Kyle can't improve. That doesn't mean Kyle can't get better. And that's really what it comes down to. That's my call for Kyle is Kyle needs to get a grip, like he needs to get a hand on this urgency in fourth quarters. That to me is what I'm really looking forward to. Is to seeing how he responds in fourth quarters because we talked about it last week. I do not feel comfortable with 10-point leads heading into the fourth quarter. I tweeted about it in real time. Uh, During the game, I was just like, I don't feel good about this. We went into the fourth, 10-point lead. I was like, I don't feel good about this. Don't feel good about this at all. And sure enough, that's the trend. That's the continuation. I should feel good about a 10-point lead heading into the fourth quarter of a game. I should. I really should. But I don't. And to me, the reason why I don't is because I would then say I think that is a reflection of Kyle. Does that mean I think Kyle should be fired? No, because that doesn't fix anything either. But I do think that Kyle is deserving of criticism. I mean, I think this is the most critical I have been of Kyle after this loss in this game. I think that may have ever been. I don't think Kyle's a perfect coach. I think there's plenty of things that he can improve on, but to me, these are the things where I look at this team, the talent that they have, even some of the considerations, and I'm like, man, you can't slip fourth quarter leads. That's a top down thing to me. That starts at the very top. That starts with your head guy in charge, and it's a trickle down. And again, I've always felt that Kyle with leads plays to not lose and he doesn't play to win. And I really do think that is a mentality. And I think Kyle is coaching not to lose, but he's ultimately losing. So my call would be it's like, let's coach to win. Let's coach to dominate. Let's coach to stomp. Let's foot on the pedal. like I get getting conservative and I get trying to run clock, and that's obviously a part of the game plan. I'm not saying abandon the game plan of, running clock and doing those things, but I want to see this aggressiveness like that I just don't see right now. I want to see this. I don't even know how to explain it. I can't even quantify it because, again, it's like only something that you can really quantify inside the building. Like I think George Kittle talked about getting back to being physical and being able to run the football. And there's a mentality that comes along with being cutthroat as a team, not letting a team have a shot at returning, not letting a team have a chance to even think about returning. That's why I keep saying that the 49ers need to treat 10-point leads like 7-point deficits. When you're down 7 and that's requiring a 2-possession game in order for you to win it, unless you go for 2, there's a different way you call a game. There's a different way you attack in a game when you flip those scenarios. So for me, I want to see a shift. Like, oh, we got a 10-point lead. We need to score more. Oh, we got a 10-point lead. That's not good enough. We need to put our foot on the pedal more. We need to score another touchdown. Okay, you give me 2 touchdowns and 3 points. All right. Then we can go into preservation mode of run clock, get out of here. But there's some that's my thing. If I had to present to you my critique of Kyle and the thing where I want to see him improve at, that's it right there. That's the biggest thing because to me, it ultimately translates to wins or losses. So that's it for me. That's my current issue with Kyle. That's it. There are other things that you can do better, of course, and nitpick, but that's my overarching theme of Kyle. Kyle Shanahan lost the team. Nick Bosa is the voice of the team, in my opinion. They don't play hard for him anymore. I'm not ready to say that yet. I'm definitely not ready to say that yet, that the team or Kyle has lost the locker room. I don't think that is, I'm not ready to say that yet, but I do think the 49ers players sense the same thing. They're looking around like this shouldn't be happening. They're looking around thinking we have the players. We have the guys in this building to get these wins. Heck, we're up 10. I don't think they've lost the locker room, but I think this is a really pivotal self-inflection point. And they've had these moments before. They've been here where they've been counted out. People have been calling for Kyle to be fired, and doom or gloom. We've been here. This isn't the first time. It's not even the second time. We've been here multiple times. So I don't think that they've necessarily lost the locker room. I think these are all grown men who understand that they're not performing to the level that they should be performing. They all know that they're better than this. They all know this. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is they're not happy because they're not playing to their standard. And standards are set by head coaches. The standard is set by the head guy in charge. That's who sets the standard. So if the team's not playing to their standard, then yes, ultimately there's an execution problem, there's schematic problems. But if it's a mentality problem, the mentality is driven from the head coach down. They talk about it all the time. Teams often take on the personality of their head coach. So if we're looking at a team that can't close out games, and it's for a multitude of different reasons, it's not one specific thing, that's where then I start saying, like, okay, is this Kyle's mentality that is like seeping into this team of we're playing not to lose instead of playing to win? And that's my assessment of it. That's just really where I'm at with that. Rodrigo says, "Hey Brad, what do you think of Baldy's breakdown saying only Ayuk is getting separation? So other than Ayuk, receivers are not getting separation." If you guys followed my training camp coverage, this was something that I was talking about all the whole time in training camp. It was one of the reasons why I was like, this is very concerning that the 49ers are seriously considering trading Brandon Ayuk because no wide receivers in 49ers training camp are getting open. What if you followed my coverage, one of the most alarming trends of this training camp was coverage sacks. Brock holding the ball, holding. No one getting separation. Brock trying to fit balls into extremely tight windows because no one was getting separation. It was a concerning training camp from that standpoint. So I can't even sit here and say that I'm surprised. I watched Baldy's breakdown. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk had a day and he was able to generate separation, but generating separation wasn't a big highlight of training camp without Brandon Ayuk there. So I can't tell you if that's, they got the scheme figured out and they know where these guys are trying to go with their routes, if it's an individual situation or not. But I would say that concern definitely showed up in training camp. Definitely showed up in training camp. Enrique says, "Hey Brad, do you think the 49ers can turn this around?" The thing is, I do think they can turn it around. I know there's a segment of the fan base who literally doesn't want to hear that. I know there's a portion of this fan base that thinks we're cooked, thinks we're done, think there's no return from this, there's no coming back. Um, you know what I mean? There's definitely a solid portion who thinks that it's over. I don't believe that. I really, because like I said, that's the whole point of what I was saying earlier is they are a handful of plays away from being 4-1. If they were getting their asses kicked and we're 2-3, we're having a much different conversation. But that's not the case. They're losing games. They're not getting beat. Does that make sense? They got their asses kicked by the Vikings. That's a true statement. But these losses against the Rams and the Cardinals, they're beating themselves. And that's one of that's the beauty and the curse of beating yourself. The beauty and a curse of beating yourself is that you can also not beat yourself. Is you simply doing what you're supposed to do and executing, you inherently unbeat yourself. You then start seeing the rewards, you start seeing the success, you start seeing the momentum drive in your direction. That's that's the beauty and the curse of self-inflicted wounds, is that you can correct self-inflicted wounds. They're not outmatched. If anything, they're underperforming. And so that's why I would say that you can absolutely turn this around. If they were getting absolutely eviscerated and were absolutely outmatched in every single phase of the game, my tune would be different. But that's just not the case. So with this game, They need to come together, man. They need to figure out the holes that they have on this team. Is it or do they need to put Renardo Green in more? Do they need to go full time D Winters next to Fred Warner? Make the adjustments. Make the adjustments that you need to make. But they still have an opportunity to turn this thing around. They're just making it harder on themselves. That's the only issue, is that they're not doing themselves any favors. Again, 4-1 sounds a lot different than 2-3. And the reason they're 2-3 is because they beat themselves, not because the other team beat them. They beat themselves, and they need to get out of their own way. They have the players, they have the coaches. Get it done, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, make the adjustment, and get better. That's it. And they have the capabilities of doing so. I truthfully believe that. I'm not sitting here, and again, the thing is with me is when I start saying, "Oh, we can't turn this around," it's probably because we can't turn it around. I get accused of being a lot of things, but like I said, the after that game was probably the most critical I've ever been of Kyle Shanahan. And there's been plenty of moments to be critical of Kyle, but that to me, that loss felt like, yeah, there were a lot of execution errors. There was a lot of mistakes being made on the field that Kyle has no control over. Kyle can't control Moody getting hurt, right? And then you can't kick a field goal. You have to go for a 4. Like, he can't control those situations. But the thing that I have a problem with is still remaining. And I think you then that's where you look at your head coach as being the head guy in charge. It's a mentality shift. He's got to be the driving force of the team's mentality. He's got to be the one telling everyone this is unacceptable. We're going to steamroll the Seattle Seahawks. Up by 10 in the fourth quarter, not good enough. Not good enough. It needs to be 20 plus for us to go into preservation mode. That needs to be a head coach thing. That needs to be from the top down. We need to attack. We need to be like Viking energy. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like a instinct and a mentality that isn't playing to not lose. It's playing to eviscerate your opponent. Statements, make statements, prove to yourself that you can finish in these moments. Because again, against the Patriots, it was like a little like, ooh, play here or there. Play here or there. Patriots could have been in that game. And that was the thing. I remember chirping that game too for a little bit. I was like, this doesn't make me feel good. This game should be way further of a blowout than it is. Even Kyle said that after the game. We should have put 50 on them. Exactly. You should have put 50 on them. You should have beat the Rams. You should have beat the Cardinals. Kyle, light a fire, man. Light a fire under everyone's behind. Light a fire under your own behind. And let's go out and attack, man. I feel like I've been quietly saying this for a couple weeks. Now I'm loudly saying it. Let's go get it. Go after it. Don't sit around and wait. Attack. You got some dogs on that roster. You got some straight dogs. Fred Warner. Brandon Ayuk finally came to the party, and he showed up in a big, big way. I know Brock got that dog in him. I know Trent Williams got that dog in him. I know Bosa's got that dog in him. Mooney, Demo. We got dogs all over the roster. Unleash them. Turn them up and go. That's my biggest thing. That is my biggest thing. Turn them up and get after it. Chris says, I think the fans are just a little tired. It's year 8 and Kyle doesn't learn on some mistakes, giving up leads, but I get your point. Yeah, the fan base is absolutely tired. The fan base is absolutely withered down to the nub. This fan base only knows disappointment in the largest of moments. That's all this fan base does. So yes, I get it. When you let two piss poor teams beat you that are going to impact your playoff seeding, yeah, the fans are tired. Absolutely. They're tired after this awful offseason of contractual holdouts. They're tired after a Super Bowl loss, the second one, multiple NFC championship loss. This team's I get it, man. I get it. I get being upset. I get being frustrated. I get being tired. For sure. But that doesn't mean that this team can't rebound. That doesn't mean that this team can't go on a run. That doesn't mean this team can't change their mentality and go freaking punch someone in the face. Stop punching yourself in the face. Go punch someone else in the face. You get what you get what I'm saying? I hope you guys hear me. Like, because it is not my thing at all to be overly negative for no reason. It's just I see zero benefit of it. Now, there are absolutely people who that fits their brand and style much better. For me, I'm only going to be critical and negative when I think it calls for it. And for me, I'm being critical of Kyle because I think it calls for it. This is the most critical of Kyle I've been in a long time. And you gotta change the mindset, man. You gotta get this team going. You gotta fire up this team, man. Well, I appreciate that, Kathy. But that to me is the difference. That to me is the difference is you get this team locked in, fired up, you change your play style, you go to a more attacking play style, you take advantage of these moments, attack, fight, punch them in the mouth, get aggressive, get angry, but take it out on the other team. We have had so much infighting all offseason. Oh, this guy's a problem. That guy's a problem. Trade this guy. Get rid of that guy. Overpaid, underpaid. Channel that energy and freaking punch someone in the face with it. That's where I'm at, you know. I've played on teams where energy of a football team is infectious. It's an infectious thing. That's why, like, you can have one day of practice where that practice is one of the best practices you have ever been to, you've ever participated in. Everyone's flying around, energy is up, dudes are chirping, they're freaking going 100 miles an hour. You show up to the same team to the next practice, and it's the exact opposite. Everything is flat. Everything is going wrong. It's just quiet. It's low energy. It's like, meh. There's an energy that comes along with a group of football players. That's why football is such a special game, is because you can when you energize a whole group of just freaking, you know, genetically modified super monsters, and they get turned up and they start attacking and they have this mentality like, we will not be beat. That's a hard team to stop. And that's what I really do think that this team could still obtain that. They could still find that energy. They can take this moment as a circle the wagon moment, is shut out all the noise, shut out all the fans, shut out all the content creators, and focus up. and beat someone up. Get back to the old school mentality of what football is and just control the other person in front of you from point A to point B and move them out the way. So that this is a big game. And so what I'm looking for on a short week against Seattle is what version of the 49ers respond. What version of them show up? Are they going to be flat or are they going to be aggressive? Are they going to be down or are they going to be hungry? That to me is going to be the ultimate litmus test for how I view this team moving forward. It's not an execution thing. Yes, you got to execute. You got to do your job. You got to take care of the football. We all know this. That's not the issue, in my opinion. We all know that you got to do your job. That's low level analysis. We know that this team, if they do their job and they execute, they're winning damn near every game they play. But I do think there's a mentality. I do think there's and again, I don't necessarily blame them. They're coming off a hard off season too. But this game to me is going to be telling. And I said it after the Rams game. I'm not ready to panic. Definitely not. Too early to panic. But you find yourself 2-4, 0-3 in division, 0-4 in the NFC. We're definitely on yeah, this is not trending in the direction that we need to go. So I see a lot of people in panic. I get it. Like I said, you guys are tired. You guys are beat down. This fan base is like a boxer been through 15 rounds, somehow still standing, but getting body blow after body blow. You got a cut eye, you got a cut cheek. You're bleeding out of your ear, like you're beat up, you're bruised, your one eye's swollen shut, you lost a tooth. That's what this fan base is right now. This fan base has been beaten and bruised since again, not because of the success that they've had in the regular season, right? It's how they've lost in the biggest moments. How they lost in the biggest moments have been absolutely gut-wrenching. And so the fan base is a reflection of that. I hear a lot about the 40 whiners. I get it. Our fan base is very passionate. I say that all the time. We have the most passionate fan base, I think, maybe in the world. And what comes with that is because this fan base is so beaten down that they have no problems airing their grievances. They have no problems of telling you what they are have issues with or what they don't like. Now, you can perceive that in a multitude of different ways. Some people go way over the top with it. But at the end of the day, we don't have a Super Bowl to sit back and say, "Oh, well, we got our sixth ring." You know, we don't have that. So, like I said, I'm at the point where I have 10-point lead PTSD. I found that out against the Rams. I found that out when they didn't score on that drive where they went almost like 90 yards and kicked a field goal from within I think 5. And in that moment, I said, "Oh yeah, I don't like that. I got sick to my stomach. I literally got sick to my stomach. The 49ers had a 10-point lead, kick a field goal, go up 10 against the Rams, and I got sick to my stomach. Who does that? Who does that? A fan who has been watching the 49ers for a little too long. That's who. Okay, great. You're positive. What if they lose on Thursday? If they lose on Thursday, we'll have a different conversation. But I also do think it matters how they lose. If they look uninspired, if they look flat, if they look uh if it just looks gross and disjointed, um yeah, the critiques are only it's only going to get louder around here. No one is going to play the short week excuse. No one's going to be like, "Oh, well, they had no time to get prepared." No. Unfortunately for the 49ers, when you lose versus the Rams and you lose versus the Cardinals like you do, you kind of burn your already short leash with the fan base. And so you run out of leash and you keep losing. That's how you see things spiral. So this is a desperate game for the 49ers in my opinion. And again, it's in the sense of just energy. Even again, I hate to say it, if they lose against the Seahawks, the season isn't necessarily over, but it officially becomes extremely challenging to get out of that hole. That hole will absolutely remind me of the 2021 team. And just because the 2001 team pulled themselves out of it doesn't necessarily mean they will, but they got to get this one. They have to they need to get a leg up in the NFC. They need to get a leg up in the West. So this is officially a must-win game against Seattle. You have to win this. You can't. You can't go 2-4, 0-3 in division, 0-4 in the NFC. You just can't do that and expect to be able to waltz right into the playoffs. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It's not. We're not mathematically eliminated, but we have to have a real conversation of the challenge that would be presented if they lose that game. So I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to see a world that exists where they lose. Um, that would be awful. That would be just. I'm a little grumpy today. I think I'll be a lot grumpy. I think I'll be a lot grumpier on Friday if we're talking about a Niner loss. I don't know if you guys have seen me like super grumpy before either, because I'm naturally an optimistic person when it comes to football, because I recognize it's a long game. So that's how I evaluate it. I'm not hyperbolic about football. I don't I don't have like this insane visceral reaction to every win and every loss and what it means and what it defines. That's not how I am. I understand that this is a long season, and you have for me, and if I want to be right on my analysis, in everything that I've learned, you have to treat it like a long season. You have to you have to stay away from the kind of knee jerk reaction, one game win or loss here or there, and the ebbs and flows. Because if you've noticed, lots of ebbs and flows throughout this early portion of the season. So there's been a lot of highs, lows, and people kind of riding that wave. And so what you don't want to find yourself is being a person who rides that wave. Oh, they won. They're the best team in the world. Oh, they lost. They're the worst team in the world. Oh, they won. See, this is why they're the best. And they lose. This is why you fire Kyle. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be on that roller coaster ride because it makes you a lot harder to be a fan. It stresses you out when it shouldn't. And just recognize body of work is how to truly evaluate team success. And but we got a body of work now, and there are some early concerns. So we're not going to pretend like those aren't there. We're not going to pretend like everything's hunky dory and where there's no issues. There's some issues for sure. But the beauty of it is a lot of them are self-inflicted, and you can correct those things. So that's where the optimism lies. Is you're a better team than what you're showing. Kyle, offense, defense, special teams, you're better than what you're putting on tape. I know for a fact that they are better than what they're doing right now. So that's where the optimism lies. Now, it's easy to be optimistic. It's harder to go out and actually do it. It's harder to go out off a loss like that against the Cardinals on a short week, go up to Seattle, get a win against another kind of desperate team who just lost. It, I don't believe the Seahawks is a guaranteed win at all. I think that's going to be a pretty evenly matched game. And I think it's going to really come down to one, who makes the least amount of stakes, but two, who really wants it more. And that sounds cliche because they all want to win, but there's an intangible quality that comes with how you perform. And that's what I want to see from this team. I want to see the intangible quality. I want to see aggressiveness. I want to see confidence. I want to see hunger. I want to see anger. I want to see nasty. I want to see smart. I want to see surgical. I want to see execution. I want to see all those things too. But I want to see it combined with this fire, internal fire, lit from within, from a whole group attacking. That's what I want. That is what I want. For sure. So, definitely a big game. Definitely a big game. No, this fan isn't going to be, or this fan base isn't going to be working off any built-in excuses off of anything. Definitely not going to happen. This is about as must win of a game that you can have this early in the season. So you got to get it, man. You got to get it for sure. You can't let this year slip away from you like this. You can't, because there's only one that's the problem. You can only blame yourself. You can only blame yourself. if I see another 10-point lead, I think you might actually, if this occurs, I'm warning you now, you might see me crash out on stream for the first time. I've gone this long without crashing out. Like when I say crash out, just like losing it. This might be the scenario that would drive me to a crash out. I got too much PTSD for another 10-point loss in the fourth quarter. I can't do it. I can't do it, man. Considering the circumstances, considering the kind of pressurized situation and where they stand in division. Oh boy. That would be a tough one. But anyways, again, this isn't the best case scenario, you know. You know, you could put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. I'm not quite ready to say that this team is cooked. I'm not. I don't believe they are. I really don't. I really don't. I'm my hope, again, like I've reiterated multiple times throughout the stream, is a fire, an intensity, and a cohesion between all three phases. If there's anything to rebuild confidence in the fan base, it's that. It's that. Playing your game, going out looking good on all three phases, executing, minimizing mistakes, efficient play. That changes the mindset. That changes the vibe. All of a sudden, we're doom and gloom now. Oh, you beat the you show up and you play 60 minutes. Also, I haven't watched the tape yet. I'm actually kind of surprised people have been taking shots at Brock for that game. I don't think Brock Purdy was perfect, but I didn't see a ton of situations that were like, "Oh, Brock cooked us there. Brock made a bad decision there." I see a lot of people talking about that sack in the red zone period. To me, it feels hypocritical of people like questioning that particular play. One of the things Brock has done, not only this year but throughout his career, is create time and create second chance efforts out of structure. How do you praise Brock for his ability to create out of structure, make these dazzling plays and runs and escapes and doing all these types of things, and then okay, one time he goes to do it, it doesn't work out into his favor. He gets a sack, kind of messes them up in the field goal thing. They already don't have a kicker. That to me is just peak overreaction. That just is peak overreaction. Like, because it's so cherry picked to be able to be like, oh, okay, well, this particular play right here, this is what's wrong with Brock. And it's like, no. Like, can you critique a play where he takes a sack? Yeah, you can. Don't take a sack. Try to get rid of the ball. But I'm also not going to sit here and fault Brock for trying to create something. That's what I want more of. And guess what? You're not going to create all the time into a positive outcome. It comes with the territory. So I think that's, again, it's just It's super hyperbolic. Super, super hyperbolic. And he's out here trying to create plays with no kicker, and he's trying to do what he can, and it didn't work out. Like, yeah, not ideal. No one's gonna say that, but you got to lose the hyperbolic assessments. Like, it's ruining football discourse. I think for people who actually understand football and its long form, is that when we're overreacting to each individual plays, especially in a sense of, okay, the team lost, let's rip apart all these plays that didn't work. Do you know how many plays I could show you in wins that are terrible? There are so many plays we could break down and like, oh, they did awful on this play. Oh, they look like crap on this play. Who blocked? No one blocked. Like, oh, Brock, terrible decision. But again, those things aren't highlighted when you win. Those things don't come to the forefront when you win. They only come to the forefront when you lose. And when you lose, everyone's trying to assess which individual play was the reason why you lost. And that's the thing I don't like about losses. Like, there's obviously going to be those plays that impact the game in a severe way, and they're going to be frustrating, and you're going to want to bang your head against the table of like, man, how did we make that mistake in that moment, and how did this guy do this in that moment? That's always going to happen in losses. But again, to treat situations as one, like a one-off situation, as if it's the trend, that's the biggest thing. Is it's body of work. I keep coming back to it. Body of work, body of work, body of work. And the body of work so far that Brock has shown is he's going to have more success creating outside of structure than he's going to have failures. So I'm not going to hold a failure that he had as if it's a crucial, critical flaw in his game. It's just that doesn't make sense. That doesn't equate to a true assessment. We can all be hyperbolic and nitpick bad plays in a vacuum. It takes zero skill. Did you know that? It takes zero skill to break down a bad play. Anyone could do it. I could get my son in here and I could pull up a bad play and he can tell me why it's bad because we can all see why it's bad. It's very easy to determine why certain things don't have success. That's not a skill. It doesn't take a skilled person to be like, oh, yeah, he underthrew that ball. Didn't go where it's supposed to. Oh, he missed that tackle. Should have wrapped up. That to me isn't the defining moment of why the 49ers lost that game. They lost that game because of something. There's something bigger at play. There's something bigger. That's why you have 3 players in the locker room saying that was a weird loss. It's weird because there's something bigger at play. And if they allow it to get bigger, that's when you get concerned. That's when you start to panic. And that's when you start to say, oh no. But there's an opportunity to get this back on track and get after it. But they got to do it. The excuses are gone. They're gone. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of public outside pressure on this team right now. Hey, they've been here before. So you can at least assume that that's where they have a group of guys who can rely on that. That's not going to save them just because they've been there before. But you can get some confidence from that. So where do you see Brock Purdy and Kyle adapt? With Brock, there wasn't really a ton to adapt because I think he had 3 bad plays, 2 were an interception, and again, I haven't broken down the film yet, so I'm still speaking off of watching the broadcast. But the things that stood out to me was the sack that he had taken after scrambling, the interception that got deflected, and then the interception from getting hit. Um, to me, and I've seen Baldy's breakdown, and Baldy's breakdown of the offense was no one was getting open, and so he was showing a bunch of examples of covered up wide receivers, Brock trying to create and scramble, and there's no one open. So it's either I really do think it's more of Kyle that needs to adapt than Purdy at this point. Is there just isn't this separation that we're used to. Brock is Brock is having a hard time. You hear a lot of people talk about how, and I've heard some prominent voices, you know, talk about his drop back passing game as not being the most like locked in part of his offense. And I think that kind of plays into the style of offense he goes into when he has fourth quarter leads. I think he needs to adapt to being a little bit more aggressive. I think I think Kyle needs to I think he needs to be more aggressive. I think he needs to change how the temperament in which he calls games. I need to see more aggressive play calling from Kyle. That's really what I want to see. I want to see him attack. I want to see them sick the dogs. I want to see them ruthless. I want to see him in his bag. I want to see him getting after it. I don't feel like I've seen that this year yet. Why is everyone talking about Purdy? It's because it's easy to talk about Purdy. He's a quarterback. Um, Throwback says so. That's on Kyle Shanahan and the players not executing. Brad, it's both. Of course, it's both. Of course, it's both. You have to execute. There's no world in exists where you can make it through a football game and win without executing. That's always going to be a part of it. That's why it's not as simple as, you know, it's not a cut and dry conversation. It's not black and white. It's a nuanced conversation which requires like if you really want to get into it, there's many concerns. You have concerns with how the defense is not only executing, but some of the things that are being called in certain moments. Um, and then, you know, injuries are a factor. There's a lot of factors that play into it. There's a lot of factors that play into it. So just chalking it up to one thing, I don't think is the correct way to look at it. I don't think that you can just say, "Oh, it's just Kyle's fault." It's not just Kyle's fault. It's not just Brock's fault. It's not just the defense fault. It's not just special teams fault. It's not just the offensive line's fault. It's the team in its totality. But when the team in its totality is at that point, that becomes a head coach issue. Does that make sense? Is when you are having this trend of undisciplined play, sloppy play, big plays given up, leads given up, that's a head coach issue, in my opinion, because he's ultimately in control of everything. He's the head man in charge. You get the credit for the wins, you get the credit for this as well. It comes with the territory. When you're performing at a high level, guess who's the best coach in the league? It's Kyle Shanahan. When your team's performing at a really low level, guess who's going to take a lot of the brunt of that? Kyle Shanahan. And I'm sure there's instances in both cases where there's other people involved and it's maybe more their responsibility than it comes down to, but it's really easy to point to these types of things uh, and things like that. Um, If you look at the metrics, offense and defense are both top 10, I believe. Well, they're not playing that way. And that's why, stats are very subjective. They're they're factual in the sense of yes, they record and track the information, but there's so much context and nuance in football that yeah, you can look at a stat and be like, "Oh, this guy, the defense is performing at a top 10 level from a metric standpoint." I don't think anyone would tell you that the 49ers defense is performing like a top 10 defense at all. So, again, the stats can't I think are should be used to supplement uh what you see on tape. Stats can also do a good job of pinpointing trends. I think that's another good thing for stats is you can identify trends and pick up repeating occurrences. But yeah, if we're going to be like, oh, well, the 49ers defense bears out as a top 10 defense, who it doesn't look like a top 10 defense to me. there, there's just, I think there's ways that they can correct some things where they can be better as a defense, but just tough, man. It's just tough right now. What do I think the main issue is with the defense? Well, based on kind of hearing how some of the players are talking about it, it feels like they're having a difficult time with making adjustments. Making adjustments at halftime because they had Connor absolutely stopped. He wasn't doing anything, and then he just absolutely ran all over them. Um, and Bosa openly talking about adjustments need to be made. Um, and they're getting looks that maybe they're not, anticipating, and they are, not making the necessary adjustments on the fly. So again, appreciate it. Good question. Thank you for the super chat. Um, but again, it's a team thing. That's why I keep coming back to Kyle. He's in charge of all of this. Oh, did he? Kyle Shanahan said he disagrees with Nick. Oh, I didn't hear that. I mean, that's sketch. That's a little sketchy. You don't want player coaches going back into the media. See that's that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, what did Kyle say? Hold on. Does anyone have the quote of what Kyle said? I would love more context on that. But yeah. Definitely love more context on that. I'll look into that a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, you got 3 players saying it was a weird loss. Bosa saying they're not making good adjustments. I think I think they're trying to tell us. They're trying to tell us. Okay, tag me. Let me see. Let me see. Which account did you tag me in? Oh, there it is. There it is. All right. When asked on Monday if making the proper defensive adjustments has been an issue this season, Coach Kyle Shanahan answered, "I wouldn't think so. When you're in an 8-man front and you miss the back, you're one guy short, and your middle third player needs to make the tackle, and he got buried." Uh, Safety Talanoa Hufanga, who lined up in the middle of the field, came up in run support with his eyes on Connor. By the time Hufanga recognized that Murray still had the ball, it was too late for him to recover and prevent the long touchdown run. That's the challenge of when you play a system where the quarterback can pull it. You can't fall asleep on any play the whole game because you never know when he's going to pull it. Okay. Wait, they're just showing different looks on just to get down. All right. Well, to be fair to Kyle, is I also wouldn't expect Kyle to necessarily throw his, because that kind of puts Kyle in a bad spot. If we're going to be objective about this, it puts Kyle in a bad spot. Um, when asked, is Bosa right about defensive coaches and lack of adjustments? Because the thing is that even if that's true and Kyle believes it, I still don't think he would say it. So I wouldn't think so. That's not a definitive answer. So this is just my read. Again, I didn't hear it live. I didn't hear it happen live. This is my read after reading the quote. Is when he says, "I wouldn't think so," and he's talking about a zone read that wasn't executed properly on the defensive standpoint. I wouldn't think so. So to me, saying "I wouldn't think so" isn't a direct response. Does that make sense? If he's being asked, Nick Bosa said this, is your defensive staff having a hard time making adjustments, or the proper defensive adjustments? And the response being is, "I wouldn't think so." I don't think that's a response. Do you get where I'm coming from? I don't think that's a response. I don't think that is. Again, he's put in a spot where he either has to say Bosa's right or Bosa's wrong, and at the detriment of his defensive coaching staff. Some people call him that zero leadership. I don't know. I think that's trying to protect your team. That's the way that I read it. Is calling out. I've heard Kyle go on KMBR and asked about his offensive line, and I don't think they were playing particularly well at the time. And he said, "Oh, they're playing good." But keep in mind, all of Twitter is just eviscerating all line. If Kyle would have came on the internet or on airwaves and said, "Oh yeah, the offensive line isn't playing well and they're really executing poorly," it would just start a fire more. So I think that's part of the context that, like, maybe we don't think about, is because if Kyle said, "Yeah, there needs to be more defensive adjustments from the coaches," all that means is that he's saying that the defensive coach isn't performing, and I don't think that's a benefit. I don't think that benefits his defensive coach. I don't think it benefits him. He didn't directly speak against what Bosa said by saying, "I wouldn't think so." I wouldn't think so isn't a response. That's not a response. Kyle, has your team been struggling with defensive adjustments? I wouldn't think so. Well, why wouldn't you think so? You don't have to think. You know the answer to that question. So that's why that's a non-answer. He didn't answer that question. So yeah, he didn't answer that question. At least if there's more, I'm not seeing it. But it's a yes or no question, right? Is your defense struggling to make an adjustment? It's a yes or no question. And when you say I wouldn't think so, is well, like you're saying that as if you have no clue. you have a clue. You know what I'm saying? I think that's he's deflecting responsibility off his other coach, to be honest. That's my read on it. Is he's taking he's protecting Sorensen a little bit, which is being perceived of lack of leadership. I would say that's actually a form of leadership if that's the quote, if that's really what was said. And he says he completely deflected it, and so that's him not throwing his coaching staff under the bus. And then unfortunately, just the Bosa comment just positioned him to have to answer it. So that's my way of reading that, is that he didn't even answer that. If that's really what his response was, I wouldn't think so. That's not a response. That's a coach speak non-answer. That he didn't answer that. Because he knows so. You know what I mean? He knows so. He knows the answer to that question. But by saying I wouldn't think so, is an omission that he's not answering the question, because he knows the answer to that. He knows if the defense is making proper adjustments or not. He knows if it's an execution issue or coaching it. He knows this. So that's my read on it, is that he was actually protecting probably his coaching staff from any additional fire. But hey, again, that's just me reading on print. I didn't hear it, so I don't know. That's just my initial read on it. If he gave a more definitive answer, then I think it will hold a little bit more weight, but I didn't see a definitive answer there. But anyways, big game coming up on Thursday. More screen game. That's all I ask. Help the players. Screens definitely do help alleviate the rush. But hey, we'll see. We'll see what they do. Appreciate everyone tapping in. I know it's always tough when the team goes down like that, but hey, they have an opportunity to get this thing corrected and back on track in a hurry. So hopefully they do. But let me know what you guys think about all this. It's wrong outro. Appreciate everyone for tapping in. If you want to see me crash out on live, that will only occur if the 49ers lose a fourth quarter lead. We'll only lose a fourth quarter lead against Seattle. If you want to see me actually lose it, that's the scenario right there. Otherwise, I would assume I'll be able to keep some kind of level head. But if they lose another 10-point fourth quarter, I might actually crash out. Good stuff. Appreciate everyone. Grab your cookies on the way out. It's not over yet, guys. We can be upset with that game against the Cardinals. It's not over yet. Get this dub against AZ. 2 big games against Chiefs, Dallas, heading into a bye. 49ers have an opportunity to right their early wrongs of the season, but they're running out of opportunities to do so. But it's time. It's time to get it. It's the no more leash. The leash is running out. Can't let go of the leash. Appreciate everyone for tapping in as always. I'm out of here for now. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see